we're going into the part of the agenda where we've got these short presentations, 6 to 10 minutes, these short, impactful hits, and we have some amazing presenters. The first is Shauntelle Nichols. I'm just going to read you a little bit about Chauntelle's background. And what each of the presenters has been asked is, what does Press for Progress mean to them? So I've got just a little blurb on that. So from Saanich Fire Department, Shauntelle is a graduate of JIBC's Law Enforcement Studies Diploma Program and is now an officer with Saanich Police Department. While at JIBC, she was recognized with awards including our very esteemed Bob Hall Memorial Award as the top graduating student in the LESD program, as well as the Minerva Foundation Award for Aboriginal Women. With her Coast Salish heritage, she served as a student representative on JIBC's Aboriginal Education Council, which gave her an opportunity to meet the chiefs and elders and provide insight into how more Aboriginal people can be inspired to choose careers in public safety. For the last several years, Shauntelle has drawn on her experience of being an officer, helping make her feel safe, to motivate and inspire her in her studies and efforts to be hired by a local police department. So what does Press for Progress mean for Shauntelle? By being a leader, by example, by being a warrior, by being the bigger person who reaches out to all the resources and help available. Stand proud and accept the help and support from those who believe in you. Please welcome Shauntelle.
So I grew up commercial fishing with my family, and then I got into the service industry. I went into an emotionally abusive relationship, and I sought help from the police, and they gave me inspiration to want to be a police officer, to want to help people. I was 29 when I went back to school. Yep, as a single mother with a 2-year-old daughter. I packed everything up, and we came to JIBC. And they gave me inspiration and motivation to be the best that I could be. They let me know that if I worked hard, they would work hard for me, and I could reach my goals. Nothing but support here. I took on extra programs on weekends just to make myself a stronger candidate for the police department. I wanted to be with Saanich Police because they're a community-based police department, and I knew it was really hard to get in. So I knew that if I set my goal to do the best that I could possibly do, then I could never look back and say that I didn't do enough. So I went in and I worked really, really hard. I want to tell everybody that we all have a story and we all have a background. Don't ever let barriers and walls get in the way. Just look at them as a barrier or a wall, and how am I going to get over it? I had lots of challenges financially and being a single mom, but I reached out to so many different resources that were available. The Minerva Women's Award for Aboriginal Women, they helped me. General student bursaries through the JIBC, there's external resources that help me. So just make sure that you look into things and don't let barriers stop your goal to be who you want to be, because we all have it in us. We're all warriors, we have all special things to bring to the table. We're women, we're strong. I want to thank all the women before me that gave me inspiration to be a professional, be a stronger woman, to reach for my goals, because I walked into the JIBC and I saw all these amazing women walking around in uniform, so proud and so strong, and I was like, I want to do that. If they can do that, I can do that. So that's really important. I think one thing I want to bring to the table is when I went into my panel interview with the police department, I told them my story, and I said, I understand I've been through challenges, and I understand that I'm a single mother, and is this going to affect me? And they just laughed at me and they said, you know, pretty much the brightest stars shine in the darkest nights, and if you can get over these hurdles and be the person that you are, that's the person that we want working for us. So take your story and run with it and show the world what you can do, because it's going to show our younger generation that they can do it as well. It's really, really important. And I'm really, really proud of everybody here today standing together and going in strong, and I'm really thankful that you've included myself and my department in today. All right, thank
you. Our next presenter is Elenore Rand. Elenore is the Assistant Deputy Minister of BC Corrections. Eleanor's responsible for the provision of safe and secure custody of accused awaiting trial and for offenders serving sentences less than two years in 10 correctional centers across British Columbia. Needless to say, Elenore is a very busy woman. She is also accountable for the operation of 55 community corrections offices that supervise individuals serving community sentences such as bail, probation, and conditional sentence orders. Over the course of her career, Elenore has taken a leadership role on issues related to offender programs, supporting Indigenous clients, and promoting excellence and innovation in correctional practice. Not an easy feat. She began her career more than 20 years ago as a probation officer, and since then has fulfilled a variety of operational and strategic roles, including being responsible for all community correctional services in northern British Columbia. Most recently, in her role as Provincial Director of the Strategic Operations Division, Elenore provided critical leadership to a diverse team of experts and specialists in such fields as strategic technology, research evaluation, offender programming, and Indigenous services. As Assistant Deputy Minister, her leadership and vision is helping to ensure BC remains a national leader in the delivery of correctional programs, and in doing so, responds to the unique needs of inmates and clients across the province. What does Press for Progress mean to Elenore? When I think of Press for Progress, I think not only of supporting women working in corrections, but also supporting women who find themselves in custody or under community supervision. Many female correctional clients have been victimized, suffered emotional trauma, or have significant mental health issues. To support these women, we need to ensure that we bring female perspectives to our work and consider the perception of authority by women and the dynamics of the abuse that many have suffered. Doing so will allow us to ensure that our correctional practices respond to the needs of these women so that we can continue to support them in making meaningful changes in their lives. Please welcome Elenore.
Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's actually really an honor. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Quechua people for hosting us here today, and especially thank Chief Larrabee for her warm welcome. On the screen is a piece of art that we commissioned when we started our Aboriginal Programs and Relationships section, and it's got some symbolism that I just wanted to point out. There's two figures, a male and a female figure, and they wear crests that represent the circle of togetherness and unity. The figures have open hands to reflect friendship, truth, and peace. There's the scales of justice that's supported by a seagoing canoe. And these symbols, combined, draw attention to the equality of people in the longhouse as they flow forward together in motion. As I said, I'm really grateful to be here today, and I'd like to take a few minutes just to speak to a couple of different perspectives. I want to talk about women working in corrections and in the field of corrections, but I also want to talk about the women that we support. In the field of public safety, we're in the business of offering service to people. And the women that we support who find themselves in the justice system and in corrections are really why we do the work that we do. So first, a little bit about some of the women. This is Miss B. Maybe. She's one of the first women who worked in corrections, and she was the chief matron of Ocala's women's unit back in the 1940s. Back then, there were very few women working in the field of corrections. In the 60s, we found more women beginning to join the branch, primarily in the field of probation. Moving through the 70s and the 80s, we found more women coming in still. In custody, it's been a challenging area for many women, as that has been a more of a male-dominated area. But the landscape has changed over time. And while there's still a lot of work to do, I'm happy to say that the number of women working in corrections has increased vastly over the years. 45% of our workforce are women. In custody, as I said, it's been challenging and the percentages are lower. So, but I am happy to say that in the Community Corrections Division, 72% of our staff are women. So a little about me. I started my career in the mid-90s. I trained here at the JI. Worked my way up through the operational division of community corrections as a probation officer, regional manager in the north, and then a provincial director. And well, just over a year ago, I became the first assistant deputy minister of the corrections branch in BC. There's been other women who have paved the way. One of my colleagues is here today, Stephanie McPherson, who is the first provincial director for the adult custody division. And there have been others. I also want to note, though, in working for corrections, I've always felt very grateful to work in an organization where women before me have really pressed for progress, but also where the organization supports the values that I hold dear to me, always acting with integrity and sincerity, treating people with respect, and supporting staff to grow and develop. And that's the organization that I'm proud to say I'm a part of. I also wanted to share a couple of perspectives that some women have indicated who work in corrections. Many of our staff speak about being very proud to be a correctional officer, a probation officer, or one of the many other roles in the branch. It's a job that allows for work-life balance. There are tremendous opportunities for advancement, and there are also tremendous opportunities to make a difference for the people that we work with. So I mentioned supporting the clients that we serve is important. When I think about some of the women, as Barb said, many have been victimized. They've suffered emotional trauma or abuse. We know that across the branch, 60% of all clients have a mental health or addictions diagnosis, and we suspect that many more are just undiagnosed. And for women, the picture is a little more bleak. Many more are likely to have a psychiatric diagnosis and much more likely to have a dual diagnosis. For Indigenous people in corrections, there are also challenges. 5% of the population of BC self-identify as Indigenous, and yet 26% are in corrections are identified as Indigenous. And then the story for women is again more challenging. 36% of all of the women who are either in custody or under community supervision identify as Indigenous, compared to 24% of the men. And in custody, it's even more so. It's 46% of all the women are Indigenous. So considering all of that, it's important to me that we support the women who we serve in custody and in community. And we need to make sure that we work to support individuals while we hold them accountable for their actions and while we assist them to make meaningful changes in their lives. We do that by paying attention to the needs that they have, the risks that they present, all that have contributed to their criminal behavior. And we also know that the needs of women are different than the needs of men. So our interventions with women have to differ. We need to recognize gender differences in how we approach our relationships. We have to have an awareness of the experiences of these women have had. And particularly when we consider the needs of Indigenous people and women who have suffered trauma, abuse, the effects of residential school, colonization as a whole, we know that culture can support them and can support their healing. And so we have a focus in corrections on recognizing the role of culture to respond to their needs. And we're working to build in approaches and techniques such as trauma-informed practice so that we can better understand and inform our interactions with the women we serve. We've got programs to support women that are specifically designed to respond to the needs of women. And we know that these types of programs can help them to change their behaviors. And finally, we know that there's much work that needs to be done to overcome health, mental health, and addictions challenges, and much needed life skills are important, so job readiness and those sorts of things are also. So, as I wrap up, I want to just make a couple of comments. I'm really proud of the men and the women, and particularly women who work in the field of corrections. We have really challenging work and a complex client group. And the women that work in corrections respond and rise to the challenges that are presented to them. I also want to just note that when I think of my work in the public service, I always think of why I'm doing the work I do and who it is that I'm there to support. And so I always reflect on that. And that's why I wanted to just speak a little bit, not just about the women who work in corrections, but the women that we serve. Now finally, I want to just make one last note, and there's a lot of work that has been done to date, and I know there's a lot of work that is yet to come, but I'm always heartened when I see young people in the room, and I want to leave you with something that's a little bit personal to me, and I don't know if you can read that on the screen, so I'll read this to you, and this is a poem that was written by a young woman who is very dear to me, my daughter, when she was 16 years old. And it was written for a grade 10 English class, and I framed it, put it in my office like every good mom would do. But the words to me are very impactful. It's called A Letter to My Daughter's Teacher. Teacher, fill her head with knowledge of how this big world can be wonderful. Show her books of sorrow and hatred, but also of love and contentment. Because I want her to have an open mind and an awareness. Let her develop an opinion, but only after she's seen every side and every story. Make sure that she knows for every low there is a high, that it is okay to smile when you cry, and you can be weak when others need you to be strong. I want my daughter to do off with envy or grief, and to harbor confidence and be proud. When her hidden flaws have been exhumed, teach her to respect them and accept them, to show off her talents. Don't baby her. Make her fight for what she wants. She will have a concept of grace and a concrete faith when you are done. So see what you can do. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next presenter, Lauryn Oates, Program Director, Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan. Lauryn is a women's human rights activist focused on education in conflict zones. It was in 1996 that at age 14, Lauryn, boy, I feel old. Lauryn read a newspaper article describing the new regime in Afghanistan called the Taliban and their treatment of women and girls. She wrote up a petition demanding that the world respond to Taliban's misogynist policies and has continued this work ever since, working in close partnership with a variety of Afghan women's organizations and international charities. Lauryn is currently Programs Director with Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan, managing education projects, including teacher training, village libraries, literacy classes, schools, and training programs. Lauryn is a fierce proponent of the universalism of human rights and frequently speaks out against cultural relativism and the global citizenship in the Canadian and international media. She is a recipient of several awards of distinction, including a Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal awarded by the province of BC in 2013. She holds a BA in International Development from McGill, an MA in Human Security from Royal Roads, and a PhD in Education from UBC. Whoa. And teaches graduate students at the School of Humanitarian humanitarian studies at Royal Roads University. In 2008, the Globe and Mail named Lauryn as the first of 10 Canadians to watch in 2009. What Press for Progress means for Lauryn? They say that to get healthy and lose weight, diets don't work. Rather, one has to adopt lifestyle changes instead of short-term or one-off efforts. Improving the status of women works in a similar way. It's a process requiring multiple inputs from a variety of players, and it takes a long time to see meaningful change and to make sure that change can be sustained. Please welcome Lauryn to the podium.
Well, good morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. Thank you very much to the JI for hosting this event. It's been incredibly inspiring so far, even if I am a little bit of an odd one out. I'm not from the public safety sector, and although I come from a family of people who are, so I'm quite used to being the odd one out. I'm very humbled to be among the other presenters here and all of you today. So as you heard, it was in 1996 that I was a grade 9 student, and I first heard the word Taliban and learned about the gender apartheid system that they had imposed on Afghanistan, a country that I knew almost nothing about. I did know one thing, though, and that was that I could not accept the idea that a girl like me in Afghanistan was denied the right to go to school. So I wrote a petition asking that my fellow Canadians condemn the state of affairs and demand action from the international community. In 2003, just over a year after the fall of the Taliban government, I went to Afghanistan for the first time. And there I found a devastated country, to be sure, but also one that was in stark contrast to the Afghanistan that we typically see on the news here. I found a place of great beauty, of fascinating history, of beautiful art and architecture, and extraordinary people. So over the last 15 years, I went back 60 more times, and it became my second home. And it's where I learned how to be a human. But most of the bad things that outsiders hear about Afghanistan are true too. There is war, there is suffering and cruelty and poverty, and there are women and girls who have endured unspeakable atrocities. But that information has come more easily to us than the other side of the story, that for every tragedy in Afghanistan, there's also a triumph, and for every villain, there is a hero. And I've been privileged to meet hundreds of such heroes working in the education sector in Afghanistan. I work on literacy and teacher training to improve the quality of education in schools, and with the use of technology to improve access to education. And I want to give you just one example that I'm familiar with that tells us something about the relationship between the status of women and a society's development. So mixed surveys, multiple indicator cluster surveys, are done every 3 to 5 years by UNICEF in developing countries, not by the JI, as you might think with their logo there. They weren't a sponsor of the research. So at that time, this was done in 2012, so we were looking at the Millennium Development Goals, now the Sustainable Development Goals. And in Afghanistan, the mixed survey was trying to measure progress made on human development, especially with a focus on children and women. And in Afghanistan, they covered 13,000 households, over 22,000 women, and nearly 15,000 children under the age of 5. And they reached every single province, the secure ones and insecure ones. And there were 80 different indicators. So everything from literacy, the prevalence of child labor, access to water and sanitation, if there were toilets in people's homes, if they had access to good nutrition. They looked at HIV/AIDS rates and a lot more. So I was working with UNICEF to write up the data into a report, and I was poring over the findings and trying to look for interesting patterns and trends. And I looked at the background characteristics of the respondents. So we collected things like their information about their employment status, their education, their level of poverty, age, gender, and so on. And I quickly noticed something remarkable. Can you guess what the single greatest predictor for nearly every single indicator was in terms of the background characteristics? A guess. That was one part of it. So it was the mother's education level. This was so predictable, you could just set your watches by it. So the more educated the mother was, the more likely she is to give birth with a skilled attendant present, so a doctor, a midwife, or a nurse, and therefore more likely to survive childbirth. She's more likely to register the births of her children, to marry later and give birth later, to have children who are attending school, who are vaccinated, who are well-nourished, and who survive infancy and then who survive childhood. Her children are less likely to be involved in child labor, to be abused, and they have more books in their homes. Their access to water and sanitation is better, and they tend to be in wealthier households. So educated mothers are healthier, they live longer, and so do their children. So what they know is literally an issue of life and death, not only for them, but for their children and families. So for this reason, in pursuing rights for Afghan women and girls, I've focused on education because that's where you get the most bang for your development buck. Right now, the international community is propping up Afghanistan. But if you invest in a country's human capital, then they can prop themselves up. And a good education system will impact a country's economy and infrastructure, its health, and its governance. And more than anything, education gives agency, and empowerment demands agency. When people have the right and the opportunity to read, to question, to think, and to innovate, when education systems have prepared teachers who can foster critical thinking, individuals acquire the confidence to change the status quo, to confront injustices, and to take on the problems that hold them back. And besides this, there's a fundamental link between education and state stability, by which I mean the absence of violence and volatility in a country. And nowhere is this more true than with regards to the education of girls and women. The most successful states in the world are those that have better gender equity. Listen to the words of researcher Valerie Hudson, who led a study that's based on the largest extant database on the status of women in the world today. She said, "The very best predictor of a state's peacefulness is not its level of wealth, its level of democracy, or its ethno-religious identity. The best predictor of a state's peacefulness is how well its women are treated." And investing in women and girls is not just the morally right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do from an economic perspective as well. We are starting to see the losses and the potential gains when women and girls succeed. In countries like Nigeria, if men and women were employed at equal rates, their economy would gain $14 billion every single year. If the average Kenyan girl completed secondary school, there would be $27 billion added to their economy over their lifetimes. And $383 billion is the amount that is lost in potential lifetime income from 4 million adolescent mothers in India. So part of supporting education in a place like Afghanistan demands recognizing, rather than the messaging of the Taliban, the positive deviants. People like Malala Yousafzai, those rare individuals who go against the grain in a time and a place where you can pay the ultimate price for doing so. And there are many Malalais, but unlike Malala, they are most often neither celebrity nor celebrated, but usually deeply isolated, working alone and at great risk to themselves, far away from the spotlight. This is Aziz Royesh. He's the founder and principal of a school in Kabul called Marifat, where 4,000 girls and boys, the only school in the country where it's coeducational, study together from kindergarten to grade 12. They're taught civics, humanism, the sciences. There's a mural about Einstein, about Rumi. The students run their own radio station and website. They do Model UN. They have an art gallery. They have a theater program. They have a school newspaper. And they learn democracy in practice by completely self-governing the school. All the students are involved in the governance. And if you try to debate them on anything, they will beat you. They have a debate club. And a remarkable thing is that Marifat's graduates have maintained a 100% university acceptance rate since 2002. Every kid that graduates from that school, girl and boy, goes on to post-secondary. The school has a bookstore, a library, an auditorium, science labs, and computers. And so because of all of this, many people want to kill Aziz. And one person has tried. And he survived, and his school remains open. So these are the trailblazers, those who clear the path for those who come after, the positive deviants, are the stars that we must hold up highest in the sky. They are the ones who propel our societies forward. So we need to stand by people like Malalai and like Aziz and the teachers and principals like him who show up every day to work in Afghanistan, where being a teacher, where being an educator can get you killed, especially if you teach girls. And defending the right to education of those girls is part of being a good global citizen. But here on the other side of the world, actually if you spin a globe, you'll see that Kabul and Vancouver are literally the other side of the world. You can fly over the Pacific or the Atlantic and it'll take you the same amount of time. I've tested this. So on the other side of the world, here in Vancouver, I think that we can do a better job with our global citizenship. Ever since I was a 9th grader, people have been telling me to mind my own business. That's their culture, people tell me. Don't interfere. The faux intellectual version of this is to say that defending the rights of other people in other cultures, in other countries, in other religions, the audacity to claim that human rights are, well, universal, is a kind of neo-colonialism. And I reject that idea, and I will not mind my own business. Because if there is one thing that I've learned in Afghanistan, it's the inconvenient truth that we're all the same, that we all feel pain the same way, that we all want our lot to improve. We all love our children and want them to make something of themselves. And we all ultimately want comfort, happiness, and dignity. So we need to press for progress for all women. And besides, culture is not static. It's social. It's made at the hands of humans, and humans can change it. And they do all the time. It wasn't very long ago that it was part of our culture for women not to work outside the home or not to vote. And we laugh at those ideas now. We would be horrified to hear anyone supporting them. But we're somehow less horrified when we hear the same said about a place like Afghanistan. Though we accept that in our own society, things have changed over time. We somehow see these exotic eastern lands as frozen. But there are revolutions afoot if you pay attention. We need to pay less attention to the Taliban and more attention to people like Marafat's principal, Aziz Royash, or to those brave women waving their scarves on sticks in downtown Tehran and getting tossed in jail for it as we speak right now, or to the lawyers and activists trying to change laws to better protect women from violence, to the journalists who write about violence against women and break taboos in their countries. In every place where rights are under threat, there are thinking people speaking out, and we need to find them and get behind them. They are the positive deviants, and the good of our future depends entirely on them. And I want to tell you that the greatest feminists, the greatest Democrats, the most ardent progressives that I've ever encountered in my life, I found them in Afghanistan because they're living and breathing battles for rights that we fought long ago and that we've come to take for granted. And we forgot that rights are not given, they're taken. It's messy and sometimes tragic, but it's been said, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are for. And the people who seize their rights are those who have agency. And agency comes from education, the kind of education that frees your mind, that allows you to solve problems, to imagine, and think critically. When classrooms are places where this kind of education takes place, magic happens. So these girls represent the world's best opportunity for change, for peace, for economic and social development, for global stability. They are a huge solution staring us in the face. The educated female is a force of nature. I've seen it with my own eyes. And the Taliban fear them, and so they should. So, happy International Women's Day, and may we all find agency from learning and teaching from our institutions of education like this one, and may equity come from it. Thank you.
All right, we've got to keep moving along. Our next presenter, Jennifer Hawkins, Acting Lieutenant with Vancouver Fire Rescue. Jennifer is currently Acting Lieutenant at Vancouver Fire Rescue. In her 18 years, she's worked in many specialties, including hazmat, HUSAR. What is that? Urban search and, right, got it. I should know those things. Heavy rescue, public education, first responder, instructor, and outreach. For the last 8 years, she's been very involved in recruitment, diversity, and outreach initiatives with both the City of Vancouver and Vancouver Fire Rescue. In 2009, she became staff liaison for the City of Vancouver Women's Advisory Committee, where she served 2 civic terms working alongside some amazing women on issues to better the lives of women and girls in the City of Vancouver. She is also a member of Vancouver Fire Rescue International Training Association, an organization that volunteers to train firefighters in third world countries, and has taught throughout Central and South America, and recently returned from El Salvador, where she was the assistant instructor for JIBC's One World Scholarship Program. Jennifer is founding director of Camp Ignite, a mentorship program that introduces high school girls to firefighting. She is a member of Seroptimist International of the Tri-Cities. Press for Progress for Jennifer, empowering our girls to become the best versions of themselves, letting them know they can be anything in life they want to be. Women mentoring women, women mentoring girls, girls mentoring girls. Let's lift each other up. Please welcome Jennifer.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Happy International Women's Day. What a pleasure to be here. So yeah, my name is Jen Dawkins, and I'm an acting lieutenant with Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services. I'm also an instructor for the JIBC. In fact, I was actually an employee of the JIBC before I became an employee of the City of Vancouver. I was a volunteer firefighter for 3 years prior to joining Vancouver. So I started my career in the fire service in 1997. So with Vancouver, it's a seniority-based system. I've been with Vancouver now since 2000, and in my first 10 years on the job, there were only 6 of us women for 10 years. So we've come a long way. We have 25 now out of 800. So that's coming a long way. And in fact, we are now around roughly the 4%, maybe just a little bit less than 4%, but that's the average percentage of women in the fire service across North America. So women in the fire service has a long ways to go. So my journey becoming a firefighter, I actually lived in Jasper National Park, lucky me, and I did one of those tests that you do. I was working in tourism, and I was working long hours, and I just wanted to be outside, you know, kayaking and rafting and mountain biking and stuff, and those long hours were horrible. So I did one of those tests that you do, what you should be when you grow up, and it came back police officer. It may have said firefighter on there, but honestly, it didn't register to me at the time. So I moved to Maple Ridge, and I was going to school and taking criminology, and I became a volunteer firefighter because I thought it would look good on my resume for the RCMP. Isn't that funny? I had no idea that 20 years ago it was probably easier to get on the RCMP than it would have been to get on I was the first female in Maple Ridge, but of course I didn't know that. So, and moving forward, you know, I actually ended up pursuing a career in fire. And I'm now with Vancouver. We're a very busy fire department, and one of the questions that they had asked us, you know, is to talk about our challenges. Well, I don't really want to share some of those early challenges because I don't think it really serves a purpose, talking about some of the things that you might have imagined might have happened to one of the first women in the fire service in Vancouver. I'm number 3 in seniority out of the 25, so it was a tough time in my early years, but firefighting is an amazing job, so I kind of changed it up a little bit, just kind of showcase some of the different things that we do. So, you know, we go to car accidents, we go to hazmat calls, and essentially we have multiple skills and we're problem solvers. So in order to be a good team of problem solvers, you want to have a diverse group of people. People with different backgrounds, people with different experiences, different genders, different ethnicity, because at the end of the day, we're all different tools in the toolbox. So if you have, and I like to equate this when I'm talking to the guys at work with a hockey team. So if you have a hockey team of solely defensemen, you're not going to have a very good hockey team, are you? You want to have a full team of different players. So we're all different tools in the toolbox. So moving forward, I became the staff liaison for the City of Vancouver Women's Advisory Committee, and I was really empowered by a lot of these women that I was working alongside. And you know, one of the things the city wanted to increase representation of women in fire and women in engineering. So the City of Vancouver has 12 or so different advisory committees, and these are citizens that are selected by the city's council, and each one of those advisory committees has a staff liaison, which is kind of the go-between between city council and the actual committee itself. So it was a very steep learning curve for me, but again, I worked alongside some amazing women. And it really empowered me to come up with the concept of Camp Ignite. So the future of the fire service. In 2010, I came up with the concept of Camp Ignite, and I worked alongside some other women firefighters from multiple different departments to create a mentorship program. And this mentorship program isn't meant to make firefighters out of these girls, but rather to empower these girls and let them know that they can do anything in life that they want. You can't be what you can't see. So this kind of goes back to what I talked about when I did that test, you know, what you should be when you grow up. I came up with the idea of police officer. It kind of ranked high on whatever my questionnaire was. Like I said, firefighter may have been on there, but you can't be what you can't see. So growing up, I never saw any women firefighters. We didn't see them in cartoons, we didn't see them on the news, we didn't see them in TV commercials. In fact, I even remember when this Chicago fire came out, I remember being appalled that at first there was no women in there. And it wasn't, that wasn't that long ago. So you can't be what you can't see. I didn't steal that. Or I didn't make that up, I stole it. I did steal it. So Camp Ignite, like I said, is a mentorship program. We take girls from throughout the province of BC, and they come to us for 4 days and 3 nights, and we stay up at SFU. And the concept of the program is we go to different departments, and different departments will host a day. So we have a collective group of women firefighters that are with them 24/7 and stay overnight up at SFU, and we have departments that will give us the use of their vans to transport, and we go to different departments. To date, we've been to over 12 municipalities in the Lower Mainland, and we've had girls from all over the province participate. And again, it's not meant to make firefighters out of these girls, but to empower them. Having said that, should a girl choose to become a firefighter, she will be the best candidate for the job when the time comes, because she will have all the tools and all the resources and all the mentorship to guide her along the way. So there's just a couple of photos, and I have to say it's been a pleasure to have the JIBC a huge part in this. On our final day every year, we actually go to the Fire Academy's campus out in Maple Ridge, and the girls actually are in their turnout gear, and they get to go into the burn building with full turnout gear on, and they get to spray water onto the fire, put the wet stuff on the red stuff. So pretty fortunate that we've had an amazing partnership. Like I said, participants have been sponsored from multiple municipalities. We have the JIBC, we have the IFF, which is our International Association of Firefighters across North America, the union. We have the provincial union as a partner, and we also have the Fire Chiefs Association of British Columbia as a partner. So we have everybody on board here. And when we go to these different municipalities, one of the amazing things is that we show up to a department that may not even have any women. And so I mean, I can take, some of the smaller departments as an example. We show up there, 20 teenage girls, maybe 10 or 12 female firefighters. We show up there, and the men are the ones that are organizing the instruction of the day. So we give them some ideas, they create the day for us. And they do that, and we're there. So you know, moving forward, when that first female gets on that job, it's not going to be a horrifying thing for them, for the men. They're going to know, they're going to be comfortable with it because they've been exposed to, you know, women of all different seniority levels, from officers like myself to junior firefighters. Last year, we even had a mentorship on top of the mentorship program, whereby we had aspiring firefighters that have already finished their fire academy training but have not yet received employment somewhere. They actually can apply and they can come and participate to some capacity and be mentored by other women firefighters. And then it's paying it forward, because my expectation is when they do this is that they will pay it forward to other youth in the future. If they're coming to us and we're assisting them in those. And I have to say, last year was the first year we had 5 aspiring firefighters participate, and 2 have now been hired. One in Vancouver and 1 in Surrey. So very exciting. So we do have applications coming out, and again, it's this. So the way that the program is unfolded is each municipality actually sponsors their own girl. So the city actually has to take they have to take some ownership into it. We've created an application package that's exactly the same whether you're applying in Port Moody or if you're applying in Vancouver. So the girls apply to the fire department. They don't have to create anything. I made it easy for them. We made the poster for them. So they apply, but the expectation is that the fire department has to give the girl the turnout gear, which is the fire gear that we wear. They have to give them the turnout gear. They have to invite them to the fire hall for a visit. They need to be engaged, and they give us a sponsorship fee, which eliminates us having to do any fundraising, which is perfect. So there is that, you know, they have to take some kind of initiative themselves. So again, girls from around the province. And happy International Day. I use my own little emoji of me. I have my own emoji and turnout gear. Everybody always laughs at me when I send them text messages. But before I go, I just want to showcase a video that was made in 2015 of Camp Ignite, so you guys get a little bit of an understanding about the program, and in the hopes that you will take it out to your community and share. And again, you can't be what you can't see. So lastly, you know, when we go out to these different communities and the local newspaper does an article and they see all these girls in the newspaper and they see us women firefighters in the newspaper or on the news, somebody sitting at home is going to sit and they're going to look and they go, hey, maybe I want to do that. And then this can happen organically. Thank you. And again, you can't be what you can't see. So lastly, you know, when we go out to these different communities and the local newspaper does an article and they see all these girls in the newspaper and they see us women firefighters in the newspaper or on the news, somebody sitting at home is going to sit and they're going to look and they go, hey, maybe I want to do that. And then this can happen organically. Thank you.
Okay, our last mini presenter, Anita McDonnell. She's the director of the Burnaby Youth Custody Services. Anita's 32-year career in youth justice, ranging from unit correction officer, community probation officer, instructor at JIBC, and currently the director of Burnaby Youth Custody Services. She has an educational background in teaching and a passion for trauma-informed practice within a correctional setting. In her spare time, she enjoys traveling and discussing the nuances of craft beer made with unusual ingredients. I love Anita. She comes from a first-generation immigrant family from Northern Ireland who came here in search of a freer, more open life. Press for progress for Anita, parity for women everywhere. It's 2018, and I don't want to slide backwards to the feelings of 1970s and where women had to fight for everything. It's about choice for women. It's about being welcomed and valued in all walks of life. It's about being free to follow your own passion. It's about advocacy, activism, and support. It's about continuing to make gains and, most of all, helping each other. Please welcome Anita.
Hello, everybody. I see we have a little crossover and some thoughts in our preparation today. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we are, of course, on the unceded territory of the Central Coast Salish people, and I thank you very much for your welcome. As I was introduced, my name is Anita McDonald. I'm the Director of Burnaby Youth Custody Services, and we're within the Specialized Intervention and Youth Justice branch within the Ministry of Children and Family Development. So our branch involves 4 distinct program areas: Youth Custody Services, which I work in, Youth Community Probation and FTAPS, or full-time attendance programs for kids, Youth Forensic Psychiatric Services, and then Complex Care and the Maples Adolescent Treatment Center. We all knit together in a system of service for some of the most traumatized young people our ministry works with. And in addition to other services provided by MCFD, we do our best to impact the trajectory of the youth we serve in a way to increase their potential in life. By doing so, reduce community risk. So, I've been involved in youth justice in various capacities for the past 32 years. As I was introduced, currently the Director of Burnaby Youth Custody Services, and I actually started my career as, and I remember this, number 56 on the Auxiliary Call Board for Youth Correctional Staff, freshly out of university. My original big career plan was to work with kids just like me. As a high school teacher, actually, I wanted to be a high school phys ed teacher. Unfortunately, I graduated from university at the height of the mid-'80s recession, so they were actually laying off teachers everywhere at that time. So I was also happened to be playing softball at a pretty high level, and I needed a job that was really flexible around my availability and was supportive of my playing career. So a friend of mine came up to me one day and said, "Hey, what about if you go down to this place called Willingdon Youth Detention Center?" He said to me, "They have kids, they got a pool, they got a gym, they got playing fields. It's perfect for you. Go on down there." So, you know, being this poor, just graduated from university student and tired of being poor, so I took that person's advice and I headed down there for a job interview as a youth correctional officer. So, in an effort to illustrate a little bit about how far we've come as a service, I'm just going to demo for you my interview, what I remember of it. It's hard from behind here, but I just walked into the room and there was these 2 guys sitting there. One had his CV, my CV, sorry, and the other had his feet up on the table playing a guitar. They didn't invite me to sit down. In fact, the guy playing the guitar stopped briefly, looked me up and down, and said, "You look like the sporty type. Can you handle yourself?" Which I answered, "Why, yes, I can." I really had no idea what he meant. And to that I said, and he said to me, after I said, yes, I can, he said, "Good, start Monday. See ya." And I went, wow, like, considering the processes now for hiring, like, it's just unbelievable. So from there, you guys, seriously, I was handed keys with little more than an orientation just to the building. I began my career in youth justice as number 56 on the Auxiliary Call Board for Youth Correctional Officers. Back then, youth custody had well over 500 kids in custody in the province on any given day. 500 kids. Today, we have less than 40. At that point, the custody environment had almost no female representation in leadership roles. but there was some very highly skilled, formidable women as mentors for female staff at the line level. At that time, staff didn't receive any formal training till at least a year into the job. So I had to just figure it out. My instincts told me to just start talking to kids. Kids like no others I had ever met in my life. Actually, looking back, I think I spent the first year walking around that center with my mouth hanging open because of all that I learned from these kids. I remember clearly one young woman running up to me one day as I came on shift. She'd just come back into custody after being out for a few weeks, and she said to me, "Hey, Anita, I'm so glad you're here. Let me tell you what happened to me since the last time I saw you." Let's see. Well, I got hit in the head with an axe. Want to see the scar? I got raped twice, and the hospital saved me from an overdose. I was shocked, to be honest. Such strength, resilience, and awful trauma. Things that I know I personally wouldn't be strong enough to survive were being told to me. It struck me very, very hard. The differences between my life of privilege and support from loving adults and theirs. Neglect, trauma, violence, poverty, abuse. This notion that I started thinking about, unconditional positive regard from adults. Those hundreds of attagirls, Anita, that I received growing up. I'd like to share with you another watershed moment from my past. So back in the day, at the old site of the custody center, we were having an open house for the school within the custody center. And there was parents there, social workers there, probation officers there, and they were in the audience in the gym. And the teachers were handing out merit awards for effort and achievement to some of the students in the custody center. There was this one big, rough-looking, muscular, tattooed young man who was in line to receive an award. The head teacher there gave a little speech complimenting this boy about his award at the mic, and then called him up to hand him that certificate. The boy stood in deafening silence in front of that mic. Everyone kind of held their breath, including me, because he was just so silent, and it was just weird. And then all of a sudden, tears just started rolling down his cheeks. He didn't say anything for what seemed like forever. You couldn't hear a pin. You could have heard a pin drop. In the audience that day was his father, with whom he had a very strained relationship, because the father was not around much when he was growing up, and there was a multitude of issues within that family. You can imagine what they were. He too was big and scary looking, covered in tattoos, basically a carbon copy of his son, just 20 years on. Anyway, this boy finally, through his tears, and by the way, crying in a youth custody center, it's not something that's done very often, because what does it show? It shows a little weakness and vulnerability, right? Anyway, this kid, he looked out through his tears, looked to the audience and said, "This is the first damned thing that I have ever gotten." Everyone in that audience, parents, staff, etc., all got the message. An entire 18 years with zero positive reinforcements from adults in his life. That dad got it. He slowly got up out of his chair, and I'm like, uh-oh. and went onto that stage. Again, we were holding our breath. And he hugged his kid. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Everyone got it. That dad knew how the circumstances of their life had affected his son in that way. Since then, since that time, myself and the many wonderful women and men I've worked with over the years have tried to generally, I know there's all kinds of ways of looking at this, but generally tried to bring that unconditional positive regard to the kids we encounter. An example of what we are doing is the hard work of looking at everything we do in our practice at the Youth Custody Center. We look for opportunities to play to the strengths of young people. We look for opportunities to implement changes to our own methods, things we do to avoid re-traumatizing youth who have lived with abuse of all kinds. In youth custody, we don't give up. We keep trying to reach youth where they are in their life. You guys, it's about empathy. It's about compassion. It's positive regard for their dignity, even when their actions in the community display none in themselves. Press for progress is our theme today. I'd like to leave you with a challenge moving forward in your fields of work. Look hard at all you do, all the things you do. Avoid saying, hey, but it's how we've always just done things. That's what we're going to keep doing. Don't be afraid to advocate for change. Next, focus on strengths. Don't always be like, oh, what the heck's wrong with you? Maybe think, what's happened to you? Treat everyone with dignity and respect. Be an example to other women and men of where you want the world to go. Be that yourself. Thanks very much for your time and attention.